Hello, all you reassociators out there, and welcome to Undeclared Bajor!
All of you are banished from Drill Society.
You may be banished, but you're welcome here.
Yeah, I was about to say, you can always listen to our podcast. We won't banish you.
Oh, yeah. My name is Fletcher. About to say hello is Data.
Sup?
Today we're going to discuss and review Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Season 4, Episode 6, Rejoined. Alternate title, Bring on the Angry Letters.
Yeah, no joke.
As always, you can expect full spoilers up through this episode being discussed, and a possible small number of minor spoilers for later in the series, but we'll keep those to an appropriate minimum. Rejoined originally aired October 30th, 1995, so keep that in mind when watching this episode.
That it was the 90s.
Right. It was the Don't Ask, Don't Tell era in full swing. It was written by Ronald D. Moore and Renee Echevarria, story by Renee Echevarria, and directed by Avery Brooks.
Yep. We know all these people.
Yeah, we know all these guys. They're all great. So let's just dive in, I guess.
Yeah, okay.
Unless you have any thoughts, any profound thoughts to start with.
I guess speaking of your alternate title, the working title of this episode was Once Joined, which I guess we can talk about that during the title review.
Right.
But, you know.
I'd say this was an improvement. But it's magic show day at Quark's. Quark and Bashir are transfixed as Dax performs her egg sleight of hand show. And I guess magic isn't a thing on Ferenginar.
No one does sleight of hand, which I would think, to like rob people or something, they would totally be, but, maybe.
Just not as like a performance art, I guess.
Yeah, right. Apparently, like, there's a quote in here where Alexander Siddig is just like, yeah, no, we actually had to learn to do, like, Terry and I to do the tricks.
Uh-huh.
And then he goes on to say, but neither of us has since been admitted to the Magic Hall of Fame.
Let's be real. There was only one trick, and they did it over and over.
That's true, yeah.
They didn't learn anything from Jeff Magnus McBride.
Yeah, right. They should have had him back in here.
Yep. Although all his tricks are like mask related, so.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Yeah. I'm sure that he's capable of other things.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure he's a well-trained magician. I just kept thinking of Penn and Teller's "Fool Us."
Yeah.
Just Quark just being like, you transported the egg into your mouth.
I love Penn and Teller's "Fool Us." So Penn and Teller.
Penn and Teller's "Fool Us."
Yeah.
I guess Dax gets the big FU trophy from Quark.
Yep.
But the magic show is cut short by a call from Captain Sisko. It seems that a Trill science expedition is coming to Deep Space Nine to do some experiments on creating an artificial wormhole. The lead scientist is Linara Khan.
Yeah.
I think I might have spelled that many different ways throughout these notes, but
I like how to make the artificial wormhole, you need to come to where the regular wormhole is for some reason.
Yeah, this is never explained. Maybe it's just like it's like having a regular wormhole right there to compare to is helpful in some way. I don't know. But Dax is visibly shaken by the news of Linara Khan coming to the station. Sisko recommends taking some leave for a while, but Dax says she's never let her past lives interfere with her duties, and she's not going to start now.
Except for those times that he did.
Yeah,
she did.
Which is a blatant lie on all fronts. Like, didn't you just suddenly ditch your duties to go on a murder quest that one time?
Yeah, that totally happened. Though to be fair, that was an awesome episode.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it was bad. I'm just saying, like, let's be real, Dax.
There's also the time she got put on trial and was going to let herself be executed because of something that happened. Because she was a philanderer in a past life.
And then, there was the time she kept having visions of a life she didn't know she had, and she had to go back to Trill.
Yeah, that wasn't really her allowing it. Like, she didn't have any choice in that one.
Yeah, that's true. That was kind of a medical emergency. But the Trill team arrives and are greeted by Worf, Kira, and Dax. Khan and Dax shake hands and simply say it's been a long time.
Like, Cisco was too important for this greeting party.
Cisco was apparently too important for a lot of stuff this episode.
Just coincidentally, him being the director, I'm sure had nothing to do
Right.
with it.
And then I did notice the much reduced presence of Chief O'Brien this episode.
Yep, Chief O'Brien is minimal. We got no Jake again. And did you notice Odo and his only one appearance in the episode and non-speaking at that, where he's like in the background during the party?
Oh, yeah. I didn't think about that. Was he off filming Con Air or whatever, too?
Maybe he was directing that other episode at this time. I don't know.
Yeah. But yeah, Worf leads the visitors away to their quarters. Another on his list of duties, I guess.
We're still figuring out what the hell Worf does here.
Yeah. We gotta find some reason for Worf to be in the episode, I guess. And Kira asks Dax, what's up with that lady? And Dax says, she used to be my wife. What? Says Kira.
I feel like in Trill Society, they haven't done as much work on, like, pronouns as they probably should. Like, would you really say my if it was, like, a different guy who lived 200 years ago? Like, that seems weird to me.
Yeah, this issue definitely comes up in a later scene. But we go back to Quark's for an explainer, where Bashir, Quark, and Kira puzzle it all out and lay it out very simply for all of us. So a previous Khan symbiote host, Nalani Khan, was the wife of Tarius Dax, the guy who got killed in a shuttle accident, and they pretended he was in a coma for 6 months or something like that.
Yep.
And I think that in that episode we even mentioned like the logistics of like, wait, what did they tell his family when that was all going on?
Oh yeah, I'd forgotten.
And this episode provides no answers to those questions.
We still don't know.
Because it was like, well, if he died in the shuttle accident, like, did they keep that a secret for a while? And then, like, 6 months later, they were like, he was in a coma the whole time. They must have told the family, right? I don't know.
And yeah, we have no idea how that went down.
Right. Maybe it's in a novel somewhere. There's a novel about the past lives of Dax. We've talked about this, right?
Yeah. The novel, I believe, is called The Lives of Dax.
Nice.
I had that.
What a great...
Like, well, I guess it's... I don't even remember if it's a novel. I think it may just be a collection of short stories about the different hosts. But...
Sure. What a great title, though.
Yeah.
So Kira wonders why Dax and Khan can't just resume their marriage. Bashir, Trill culture expert, where's Lita? She should be explaining this.
Right, yeah.
Explains that that's called reassociation, and that's bad. They could get exiled from Trill for doing that, which would mean the symbionts would never get to get rejoined, and when their current host dies, they would just die.
It seems really bizarre to me, given how the entire society is built around, like, keep the symbiotes alive. That
Right.
they're like, nah, screw those symbiotes.
I guess those symbiotes, they broke the rules, I guess. I don't know. But yeah.
Also, I'm pretty sure that you could find another Trill that wanted a host or a symbiote bad enough to come and take the banished symbiote. Like,
Ooh.
we've seen examples of people who are just like,
Right.
I want a symbiote, no one will give me one.
Yeah, there could be this whole black market of like banished Trill and
Yeah.
yeah.
So there's stuff in here about this taboo, which I like his reasoning, because it was Michael Pillar's idea to have this idea in this concept in the episode. He actually came up with the idea for this taboo like in the second season, but they didn't find a way to kind of slip it in until now. So what he says is, and it's interesting to me that it doesn't get described this way in the episode, but he's like, they'd have to have this really strict taboo in order to avoid an aristocracy of the joined. Otherwise, they'd only want to hang out with each other, their dear old friends from 500 years ago, and it would become a really screwed up society.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. I mean, the way Bashir describes it also kind of makes sense.
Yeah,
Like, I could understand how that would be kind of like a Trill version of incest or something like that. But I mean, how much of an expert is Bashir really? He could just be like pulling all this out of his butt.
Yeah, no, I mean, I assume that he like asked Dax, and Dax told him, and he's just parroting it and trying to look smart.
Right. He read a Wikipedia article about Trill stuff. So Dax is getting ready for a fancy reception for all the scientists when Cisco comes by for a check-in. She assures the captain she's fine, but she puts her badge on upside down, seeming to indicate the opposite.
Yeah.
So he's like, I'm not convinced, Dax. I'm not convinced.
Well, what can you do?
At the reception, where apparently we just see Odo, who never talks.
We also, it's, no one says anything about it, but this reception is the first appearance of the Bajoran dress uniform.
I did note, Kira has like what color? Like lavender.
Blue, like
fancy,
like a light blue.
Yeah. And also, I keep noticing this, but I never bring it up. At some point, Dax was promoted to lieutenant commander.
Yeah, I thought about that last episode because or maybe it was this episode. They introduced her as commander, and I was just like, wait, when did that happen?
Yeah, I think right at the beginning of the season, she had 2.5 pips.
So she's climbing the ranks. She started out. Did she start out at the show as a lieutenant junior grade or a full?
I think
lieutenant?
she was a straight up lieutenant, but I could be wrong.
Okay. Well that's not that much of a jump then.
I believe Bashir is also a full lieutenant now, and I believe he was a junior grade at the beginning of the show, but I could be wrong about that.
I mean, he just came out of the academy, so that would make sense. Yeah. Yes, okay, I'm seeing a picture of her from early on, and she's definitely a full lieutenant. So, yeah, you're right. Oh, hey, here's a picture of her and Bashir arriving on the station. Yes, he is a lieutenant junior grade, and she is a full lieutenant.
Okay, so...
You're right.
Yep. It's at some point, I think between season 3 and 4, they just both got promotions. I think maybe Cisco was so happy about getting promoted, he just handed out a bunch of promotions to everybody.
Also, in this picture from when they're arriving on the station, it looked so bizarre to me, and I couldn't figure out what the deal was. It's because they're wearing the Next Generation uniforms when they show up.
Oh, yeah.
And I was just like, have I never seen her? Does she not usually wear a uniform? Because she looks weird to me here, and that's why. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I remember that episode, and there was the whole thing where O'Brien showed up in the old uniform, then he put on the new uniform, but then he went back to the
old one again on the Enterprise.
He went back to the Enterprise, and he had the old one on again.
Yeah, can't disrespect Captain Picard with that new uniform.
So at the reception, we learn that Worf will be commanding the Defiant during the science mission. And then the subject of what Klingons dream about comes up, and Worf uses the opportunity for some masterful trolling.
It was good, although actually my favorite bit is before that, when the guy's like, you must be really excited to be taking part in such a historical event, and he's just kind of like,
yeah.
And who was it? One of these scientists was like, I don't think Klingons really dream of that kind of thing. And I was like, I feel like Worf should be like, look, I've been involved in lots of historical events, if you want to know the truth, and they almost always suck. So it's just,
He was just like, what crazy thing is going to happen now? Like, are we going to summon, are we going to summon a monster through the fake wormhole? Or
it's like, and now I'm trying to think, like, what? So I'm trying to think of the major historical events in this society he's been involved in. Obviously, Wolf 359.
Sure.
He kind of showed up after the fact at that one, I guess. He was on the first ship to, like, use that shield to let you go inside a star. That was also a bad situation. What else? What like crazy historical things did the Enterprise do?
Oh, I mean, so much.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
I mean, there's always some scientist doing some experiment and it went horribly wrong. And then,
yeah.
Come to think about it, like, whenever they're doing wormhole stuff, sometimes it cuts over to Worf, and he just has this, like, stare on his face. And I think he's just thinking, it's like, okay, what's about to happen?
I mean, he was there when they were checking out the Barzan wormhole once upon a time, but he wasn't one of the guys who almost got trapped in the Delta Quadrant because of it. So
he's just like, I've been through this rodeo too many times. Dax and Lenara run into each other at the buffet table, and they have a pleasant, if awkward, conversation. But afterwards, they catch each other staring at each other.
Yeah, not at somebody else.
Right. Setting up for the science mission, which includes Michael Eddington.
Yeah, I noticed. I'm just like, wait, he's here? All right.
It's like, I guess it's like we can't use O'Brien, we can't use Cisco. Odo, I guess, is having a week off or something. Who do we shove in there?
Like, that was my thing. It's like, shouldn't this be an Odo thing? But I guess, if they're going on the Defiant, maybe that's Michael Eddington's territory, so.
Yeah. But Jadzia and Lenara find themselves working alone together. And then they pick up an obviously ancient argument about Lenara, or I guess Khan's worrying. And then this is where they really struggle to keep the first and third person pronouns straight when discussing this issue. But Dax uses this opportunity to apologize for Terias's cavalier disregard for personal safety, which wound up getting him killed.
Yeah, I mean, that pretty much puts the end to the argument about whether, he's too unconcerned about safety when it gets him killed. And it's like, okay, well, you can't really argue anymore at that point.
Yeah. Unfortunately, in the real world, you don't get the chance to say, I told you so, when that happens.
It's true.
I guess this wrong has been sort of set right now. But Dax invites Lenara to dinner with her and Bashir. Which, why of all people did you pick Bashir? But
because he's the one that she could manipulate into like showing up at the last minute in an awkward situation. I
have a feeling that Kira would love to be at this dinner.
Maybe
she's like, oh, I gotta see what this is. What's going on here?
I mean, she could have invited Quark. He would have showed up, but that would have been a different kind of awkward.
Yeah. But at this dinner, Dax and Lenara catch up while Bashir looks on in extreme boredom. And then Dax talks about Curzon, who apparently would be horrified to know that Dax was becoming a scientist, which I guess he never knew.
She met him that one time. I assume that joining with Odo, he did figure out that she was a scientist. But
right. Well, I mean, she also met him when she was an initiate.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I guess maybe she hadn't officially... Like, if you're concentrating on becoming a host, maybe you haven't selected like a career sort of thing yet.
Yeah, and yeah, when he was Odo Curzon, he definitely didn't comment on it that we saw. So
yeah,
but he had other things on his mind though. So
if that episode had happened after this one, he probably would have commented on it. But they hadn't decided that he hated scientists yet.
So yeah, also mentioned is Curzon's rules are made to be broken philosophy. So
except for this one,
right? Well, I mean, I think this is kind of put in to explain away some later behavior. Because even Lenara calls her out as like, I don't have a Curzon inside me telling me to break this rule.
She does, but I don't like the entire episode, especially that line, tries to blame Jadzia's attitude on Curzon.
Yeah.
But Sisko is specifically like, no, this is the one like line that Curzon would not have crossed. And this is now the second time that we've seen Dax like fall suddenly in love with someone and decide to chuck her entire life out the window to be with them. And so I think that this is a Jadzia thing and that she's just trying to blame it on Curzon.
Yeah, this is a good point. Dax admires Lenara's Klingon earrings, and Lenara gives them to her as a gift. And then they hold hands and talk lovingly to each other. And then the camera turns to show that other Trill guy watching them creepily.
The one that's not her brother.
Right. Yeah, we forgot to mention there's also her brother and another guy who's not her brother are on this mission.
Yep.
And some other people who don't have lines. But finally, it's game day. Dax and Lenara work side by side while other Trill guy voices concerns to Lenara's brother. The first wormhole experiment is a great success, and Dax puts her arm around Lenara in celebration, which causes lots of meaningful glances to fly around the room.
Well, I mean, she is like, I'm so proud of you, so proud. And I'm just like, that's not really your place at this point. Like, that's going a little too far.
Yeah. I'm so proud of you, lady I just met.
Mm-hmm.
Later, Lenara is having lunch with her brother, who brings up his concerns. She insists that nothing is going on, but neither of them seems convinced. In her quarters, Dax is doing some kind of yoga between her couch and coffee table, as we all do, when Lenara comes in to tell about the conversation she just had with her brother. Dax says maybe they should back off so that people don't get the wrong idea, but Lenara counters, or the right idea. Dax says she doesn't want to take the risk, knowing that Lenara might be hurt. Then they spend what feels like an hour almost kissing, and then they kiss.
So the vast majority of the notes in the article are about this one scene, as you might imagine.
Yep. I was just the whole time thinking, I was like, because I didn't remember this kiss. I was just like, would they be allowed, like, would they get away with this? It's like, are they going to do this? And then I was like, oh, no, they're taking too long. They're not going to do it. Then it's like, oh, they did it.
Yep, they sure did. And apparently it was... So there's a couple different angles that this comes at it from. First off, like, Avery Brooks is directing, and so he was apparently very determined that we're not going to turn this kiss into, like, a big thing. Like, Entertainment Tonight wanted to film the kiss, and he was like, no, get out. And both of the actresses are quoted in here as being like, you know, like, Avery Brooks was so great at directing this, and he, like, you know, he gave us this space, but he was so encouraging, and he made a point of not, like, trying to make a big deal out of this and this and that. And so there's a lot of praise in here for how Avery Brooks handles directing of this episode, especially around this bit. So I guess that's good for him.
Yeah.
Because another thing is the entire staff, and him in particular, is just like, look, this isn't a story about gay anything. And here it is. He's like, look, it was a story about love and the consequences of making choices out of love. The kiss was irrelevant. And this is Avery Brooks talking. And so he's just like, and then Renee Echevarria is like, we could tell the story without ever talking about the fact that they're two women. And Ronald D. Moore says, it deals with homosexuality and sexual orientation and tolerance, but I'm very proud of the fact that nowhere in the episode does anyone blink an eye at the fact that they're two women. That part just sails past everyone on the show.
Sure.
And then Irish Stephen Bear is like, yeah, we're not doing a show about lesbians. We're doing a show about trills.
As a metaphor for lesbians.
Well, yeah. And so and that's the dichotomy, because everyone keeps insisting. It's like, no, it's a love story. It's not about gender. There's a longer section in here from the season 4 DVD where Avery Brooks goes on at length about that. And he's like, I was adamant we're not going to sensationalize the kiss because, you know, I mean, for Star Trek, I suppose, or even at the time for television, primetime television, it was kind of a big deal. But at the same time, Ronald D. Moore is in here, like, patting himself on the back for being like, yeah, you know, we did this. This was just a lovely bit of allegory, because Star Trek is really at its best when it's doing an allegory of our society, which I agree with that. We've talked about that before.
Sure. The
episode, despite, I mean, in addition to the fact that it gets compared to Plato's Stepchildren from the original series with the interracial kiss.
Sure.
I think that the episode is very original series in that, because the original series was big on, like, doing those allegory things. And so somebody in here even says, it's like, yeah, this was like a very Gene Roddenberry-esque approach to, like, dealing with an issue of our time. Because for those of you unaware, in the 90s, this was a big thing. It was like,
right.
Ellen came out and people were like, cancel that show. You can't have a show with a gay star.
Right.
And so this was right in the middle of that big sort of era where it was like, this is a thing, but we can't talk about it or show that it's a thing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this is like, in this time, it was like, if you wanted to live openly, like, as a couple, you had basically had to, like, move to San Francisco or something.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
You could not stay where you were and be open about that.
And there's an interesting, someone named Laura Cottingham, it's quoted here in 1996. I don't know if it's a book or it may be a book, called Lesbians Are So Chic. This is from page 29. And she says, the dual function that lesbianism played and displayed in Rejoined, an episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, is worth considering because of the rarity of lesbianism in televised science fiction. The show offered yet another extreme enactment of the dialectic of visible and invisible lesbianism, the now you see it, now you don't magic of today's popular culture version of lesbianism. What could be more lesbian visible than the hottest, longest kiss between two women ever showed on U.S. primetime television? In New York City, lesbians circulated privately taped VHS copies of the episode.
Huh. I mean, but it was broadcast on TV.
Yeah. So I like that. It's like, it was on TV, but we gotta like, you know, I guess maybe a lot of people didn't watch Deep Space Nine in that community, maybe. So they're like, oh, you gotta see this. Yeah, this was on primetime TV.
from their point of view, it was like this weird obscure thing. It's like, oh, that weird nerd show did something that we like. Show me the illicit videotape.
I like this quote. It gets its own bullet point. It's from the What We Left Behind thing. Ira Stephen Bear himself thought the episode was, in quotes, great.
Well,
so yeah, there's that.
Sure.
And so, okay, so we got, and then we get to what Fletcher intimated at the beginning of the episode. We get to the complaints section.
Yep.
Which, there's a lot of stuff in here about that, but, so, yeah, due to its inclusion of a quick kiss between two characters of the same gender, this is one of the most controversial episodes in the history of Star Trek. According to Ronald D. Moore, some people felt betrayed and didn't want to see this in their homes. An affiliate down south cut the kiss from the broadcast.
Oh my goodness.
Terry Farrell says that, this was like a big thing that they did and so controversial, but to this day, people still come up to me and say thank you. And then Renee Echevarria says, my mother was absolutely scandalized by the episode, shocked and dismayed. She told me, I can't believe you did that. There should have been a parental guidance warning. And then it's one of the good bits is Steve Oster recollected a man called the show and complained, you're ruining my kids by making them watch two women kiss like that. A PA took the call, and after hearing the man's complaint, the PA asked if the man would have been okay with his kids seeing one woman shoot the other. When the man said that he would be okay with that, the PA said, you should reconsider who is messing up your kids.
Why would he say that's an obvious trick?
Yeah, right? Like, don't agree to that.
I mean, the kind of guy who thinks that saying, like, a 2-second kiss on TV would destroy his children psychologically forever.
Yeah.
Might not be astute enough to realize that. So, story kind of tracks.
And Ira Stephen Bear is taking his, like, superior... He's just so disappointed in society. Where he's like, my idea that sci-fi fans are socially far-thinking, that they're in many ways liberal, leftist, humanist, whatever, was totally blown apart by some of the incredible comments we received. There's a strong conservative strain in the American soul, and maybe it's there in sci-fi too. I don't think we were saying anything that was extraordinarily out of line, but maybe we were, and that's pretty sad.
Yeah, well, you can't, like, there's definitely a self-reporting bias.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
In this data set, so don't take that too hard.
You didn't poll the entire audience to say, how did you feel about this? You got all the calls and letters from the nut jobs or whatever.
But yeah.
And I like the note in here that while this is the first Star Trek same-sex kiss, it was not until Star Trek Discovery 22 years later that two men would kiss in Star Trek.
Yeah, I mean, that's always the thing. That's always the one that, like, gives people the ick factor or whatever, it seems like.
Okay, so Terry Farrell's talking about how this was one of her favorite episodes, a lost love episode, and I'm so glad we got to do it. I like the idea of sending people a bigger message than they're used to seeing on TV. So something that makes them think and gives them something to talk about. And I think the show is appropriate for Dax, more appropriate than any other character on television, because she's always had this duality, because she's been a man and a woman several times.
Yeah.
And so with someone without that duality, it would have been a different thing. And the idea for... Because in the original script, it was going to be a man, Khan's character.
Uh-huh.
And Ronald D. Moore's like, yeah, I was reading it and thinking about the story, and literally I was on my way home and I started to think, hey, this would be a much stronger story. It would really be a standout episode of the series if this was a woman. And so that's how it happened. Yeah,
like I was thinking, if Khan was a man, like that would be just like a cool, fun little twist. But yeah, having it be like, same sex is what really makes it stand out.
If it had been a man, I would have felt very reminiscent of that Next Generation episode that introduced the Trill to me.
In what way?
Well, because like Crusher falls in love with like the Trill guy, and the symbiote ends up in a different body, and then there's a question of like, can we do these feelings things? Is it the same? Sure. whatever.
Yeah. I did think it was interesting that they explained it pretty well, but it was like these are two completely different people. They look completely different, but it's like they recognize each other right away.
It's true.
But I guess it makes sense because she says, like, sometimes I feel like I'm looking at a different person, but then you'll do something exactly the same way, like, my wife did or whatever.
Right. And we know from an episode not that long ago that a lot of these, like, unconscious things carry over, like her holding her hands behind her back or whatever. Right. So it totally makes sense that you would see those things.
It fits. Anyway, where were we in this episode?
At the kiss. That's why.
Oh, yeah, right.
Sidetrack.
So Dax goes to Cisco for advice and says she wants to profess her undying love for Lenara and run off with her. And Cisco basically says that's a really bad idea, and after the whole Meridian incident, I'm starting to notice a disturbing pattern. But if that's what you truly want, I'm on your side.
Well, he's like, that's a really bad idea. And she's like, shut up. Who are you to tell me? And he's like, you came to me for advice and I am giving you the advice. And she's like, oh, yeah, okay. Yeah,
it's like, hey, look, this is the advice I'm giving you. Like, you don't have to like it, but it's there if you want to take it. But they go back out on the Defiant for the next wormhole experiment. This experiment is not as successful as the first. And the artificially created wormhole blows up in their face. Apparently they were a little too close to that wormhole. Reports come into the bridge of a plasma fire in engineering, where Lenara is. Dax rushes down and sees Lenara unconscious on the other side of a big green fire. Michael Eddington is like, well, nothing to be done. Let's just vent the whole room into space.
Yep, gotta kill them all. Let God sort them out, or however that goes.
He's like, we have mere moments until the fire makes the whole ship blow up. And then so Dax covers the fire with a force field and then goes into what I would describe as ultra slow mode to walk over it. So it's like, oh my gosh, time is of the essence. Then she's like tiptoeing slowly over this force field. But she goes over to Lenara, she pulls her out through a door that I guess she didn't have time to get to from the other side or something. And then the two embrace and vow never to lose each other again. Then later, Dax goes to visit Lenara and pitches Lenara on coming to live on the station with her. Consequences be damned. And Lenara is like, that's a big step. Call back, see?
Yep.
Ultimately, she decides she can't live with the consequences, and she leaves. And so as Lenara departs the station, Dax watches from the walkway above, and they share one last longing look, and then Lenara leaves. The end.
Where do we do the title review? I don't remember now.
Before the regular review. You want to do the title review?
Sure. Yeah, because that's the only thing left on my list was that thing about like once joined, where we touched on it, but we didn't really go into it. So, Rejoined, I think makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
This title. I think that is a little bit of a pun, just a perfect fitting title for this. Once joined also wouldn't have been bad though.
I think Rejoined is way better.
I think you're right.
I think it's going to be memorable. It has that great works on multiple levels thing.
Yep. And I mean, you said memorable, but it's really like when you hear that title, it's like, oh, join on this show. That's got to be like a Trill thing.
Right, exactly. It's like anytime you say profit.
Yeah.
You're getting some Ferengi. It's like join, you're getting some Trill. And like Rejoined, you're like, oh, okay. It's when those two people are rejoined. So good work on the title this week, guys, I think.
Yep.
I was just thinking about, you remember Batman the Animated Series?
I do.
I was just thinking because, we review the titles partly because they show the title in the episode.
Yeah.
It's like on The Simpsons, and I think they mentioned this many times on like their commentaries and stuff. It's like they didn't expect people to ever actually know the titles of the episodes. Yeah. So sometimes they would just put like Bart Gets Famous or whatever. It was like, okay, slap that on, call it a day. But yeah, I was thinking about Batman the Animated Series and how that always had really great episode titles, I felt like. And they always came up on this just like these beautifully drawn title cards.
Yeah.
every episode. I was like, they should do that on Deep Space Nine or something. I don't know. I was just having some nostalgia about that.
The lady who played Lenara Khan, sorry, I was looking at this, is her third of 4 Star Trek appearances.
Oh, really?
The third of 4 characters that she would play on Star Trek. It looks like the 4th one had multiple episodes that she appeared in. But anyway, like, she's in that popular Next Generation episode, The Next Phase, as a Romulan woman.
Okay.
And then she's, looks like she's one of the psychiatric hospital inmates in Frame of Mind.
Okay.
And then she's Lenara Khan here. And then, in the final couple seasons of Voyager, she's the Borg Queen.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, look at her.
Yeah, look at that.
But sorry, I was attracted by that. Yes, the way the Batman the Animated Series did the titles is a lot of fun. I like when shows have fun titles. Like we talked about like Friends and how it's like you can always figure out what episode it is because of how they did the titles, and I like a clever use of titles.
Yeah, or like on the Hannibal TV show where every episode was like the course of a meal.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Or like in Better Call Saul, when like they had a gimmick every season for how they named the titles. Like in the first season, it's like all the titles ended with O, except for the episode Alpine Shepherd Boy, which they originally wanted to call Jello, but they were informed they couldn't use Jello because that's a brand name.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah.
Or I think it was like season 3 when.
What do you call it if you can't use Jello?
It was like if you take the first letter of every episode title and then rearrange them, it's spelled Frings Back, which reveals the big reveal for like the first episode of the next season.
Oh, nice.
Which was that they brought the character Gus Fring back to the show.
Very clever.
Although it was actually a prequel, so I guess he wasn't back. He was, but yeah.
He was still there, but...
Yeah, it's funny, like, you know, like after that, they were talking about, it's like, after that, everybody was like carefully scrutinizing their episode titles to like try to find hidden clues, and they were like, yeah, we didn't do any like hidden clues after that. Just stop looking, please.
That's what they would say if there were hidden clues.
Yep, true.
It's like Futurama, where when people cracked the alien language, they had to come up with an even more complex alien language.
Yep. Did that one take a while to get cracked? I forget.
Okay, so there were I think 3 alien languages, because one was like super easy, and then they did like a slightly harder one, but that also got cracked pretty quickly, and then they did a ridiculously hard one that I think did eventually, but that one took a while to. If I remember right.
Because like all kinds of like brainy people were on that show, and
yep,
yeah, because the first one was like a simple
substitution,
simple substitution, and I think this was it. The second one where it was like every letter determined. It was like a shifting cipher where every letter determined what the next letter would.
Yeah, something
how
like
much
that.
You would shift the next letter or something like that. Yeah.
Let's see. Oh. There's some interesting stuff in here in the Apocrypha section on this character.
Okay.
So, in the Q Continuum novels, Q Strike and Q Space, which I read a long time ago and remember vaguely because it's like a trilogy of Q Continuum novels. They're kind of interesting. Anyway, Khan's work on artificial wormholes inspires Dr. Lem Fall, a Bajoran scientist, to find a way to breach the galactic barrier.
Ooh.
Which it turns out to be a bad idea.
Didn't they do that in Star Trek V?
That was that's a different barrier. That's the one at the center of the galaxy. I forget. It's like named slightly differently. Hold on, I'm going to find out.
Oh, okay.
That's the Great Barrier at the center of the galaxy. The galactic barrier is around the outside of the galaxy.
Oh, okay.
And so, yeah, in the Q Continuum novels, there's a guy, a big bad guy out there who's like called O, and he's an asshole. But anyway.
Oh, sure.
Let's see.
He's not as good as Q.
Well, I mean, Q in the novels, like younger Q kind of accidentally lets him into our universe through the Guardian of Forever. And then he thinks, and O is like, hey, let's go do this stuff. And Q thinks that, it's all good fun mischief, and then it turns out that O and his buddies are a little beyond Q level of mischief, and even Q's like, oh gee, should we be doing this?
When Q has qualms, that's when you know you're
exactly. Lenara Khan also appears in all 4 issues of the Star Trek Divided We Fall comic book miniseries.
Oh wow!
Where she is kidnapped by Varad Kalon, who you may remember as Varad Dax. So he's still out there trying to get a symbiote, I guess.
Wow!
And then Dax has to rescue her.
Or him, her. I guess he escaped from jail or something. I don't know.
Yeah, he must. Hold on. Now we're going to go to his article and see what it says about that. Because, I guess he must have. Varad appears in The Lives of Dax story Reflections, attempting a black market operation of loaning symbiotes to various Trill. So now he's just like, did he get one himself and now he's hooking up other people? There's that black market we were just talking about.
Yeah.
He also appears as the antagonist in Star Trek Divided We Fall, a crossover featuring characters from Deep Space Nine and The Next Generation, attempting a coup against the oppressive joined Trill, quote, dictatorship, and then committing suicide once his plans are thwarted.
Oh no.
This story gives him his full name of Varad Kalon. Or
sure.
Spoilers for that comic book from several years ago.
If you can find that comic book and read it, I apologize for spoiling that.
And then in the video game Star Trek Online, Lenara Khan is implied to have died sometime prior to 2409, with the Khan symbiote having passed on to a 7th host, Damar Khan.
Oh. So, man, there's a lot of Lenara Khan lore out there.
She's out there, or not out there any longer, as the case may be.
Yeah. Tosk, 1 episode. Lenara Khan, tons of background comic books and
Well, I guess if you want to tell a story about Trill, then they're like, well, what Trill do we have in the stable of existing canon that we can use? And there's not that many options, quite honestly.
Yeah, true.
I wonder if what's his name, like the initiate from that 1 episode, pops up somewhere.
Oh, probably.
And now I got to go try to find his. I don't remember his name though. He's Trill initiate guy.
I think I want to say it was like Arvin or Arvad or something like that.
Arjun.
Okay.
Yep. He does not appear to have any apocrypha concerning him.
He decided he didn't want to be joined, and he went on and lived a peaceful life. The end.
Good for him.
Well, I think we filled enough time tangenting there. So you want to get into ratings?
Yeah, sure. Let's do that.
Okay. Well, how would you rate? No, not Meridian.
No, not Meridian. We talked
Rejoined.
About that. We didn't rate Meridian well at all. Okay, so Rejoined. That's the episode.
Yeah.
So far after the fact, it's hard to feel the impact from, the culture shaking kiss.
Sure.
So I mean, I might have had a different outlook on it in the 90s, although I don't know what I was thinking in the 90s. I was very young then. I probably didn't care. So I'm not taking that into account over much. I do like, as I mentioned, their attempt here at doing like an original series sort of allegory.
Sure. I
appreciate when that's done well in Star Trek, because it is really one of the foundational ideas behind the franchise. So I think they did a good job of that. I think that we're getting another Dax story that is actually interesting and actually like taking Dax somewhere, as opposed to early on when we kept getting the Dax stories that didn't do anything about Dax. So that's good.
Yeah, Dax her hand is on the steering wheel this time. She's making decisions. Yeah.
I mean, in the end, it's not her decision that matters, because it's the other person's decision also, because, that's how relationships work. But still, she's putting herself out there. And I don't hate this one quite as much as the choice she made in Meridian, where she just met the guy and she decided to like give up all of her life and career and whatever to go with him to another plane of existence.
Right.
I believe it more here because there's a history that we're touching back on.
Right.
And I think the show even does a decent job of, between them at various points, they're like, no, we can't do it. Society says we shouldn't. And then they're each at some points like, no, screw that societal, whatever. But I feel like there's an undercurrent here of maybe there is a good reason for this, because at points they seem to be losing their identity into the identity of these past selves, where they start talking like they are that person, and that old relationship is the current relationship, when in reality, while you have those memories, you are two different people than those two people were. And so trying to have the exact same relationship as those two people would never work. But and so I feel like there's an undercurrent here of maybe there's a reason for that, because this may be doing things to you that you wouldn't want. And I like that. Maybe I made that up and imprinted that on the episode myself, but I felt like I was picking up on that.
Sure.
So anyway, all that to say, I think that it is a solid episode, and it is a good Dax episode, and it has some issues for sure, but I like it. And so this is another one where I'm kind of on the line. Like, do I like it enough that it's commander, or is it just a lieutenant commander? And I think this is like a high lieutenant commander for me. I'll put it lieutenant commander.
Okay. Well, let me dive into this big blob of notes that I wrote.
Okay.
So yeah, this is gonna be a little bit of a roller coaster. Bear with me. So just like Meridian, I feel, first of all, I have mad respect for the episode. But just like Meridian, there's this very simple romantic dilemma that gets stretched out way too long. Even after it did such a good job of making me care about these characters. Definitely way better written than Meridian. Mm-hmm. The acting is really good. And I just love the once in a lifetime type way that they used same-sex romance as an allegory for itself. I don't think I could have ever come up with that. But I feel like it needs more stuff happening instead of just building up to the obvious dilemma. Even though, it's definitely a character-focused episode. So I understand. I understand that. But
right.
But yeah, I also think it's a well-done allegory for not just the issues of the time, but just like issues of other times. Just like which one was it? Plato's Stepchildren or whatever?
Yeah, Plato's Stepchildren, yeah.
Yeah, so just any kind of like romance that is taboo or forbidden by society, and there will be consequences for pursuing it.
Okay.
So obviously we're supposed to want these two to put their love first, and to be disappointed but understanding when they choose not to. But as far as single episode romances go, this one still suffers from all the problems of those types of episodes, even though it is done pretty much as well as it possibly could be. Because the whole time I just know, like, don't get too attached to what's going on here. And I know in the very next episode things are going to go back to normal.
Right.
It's not like when you have a character like Bareil come in and they can kind of build this up, like this relationship over multiple episodes. And then you can start to have real fears about where this might end up and what the consequences of that might be for the character. But all that said, if somebody says this episode is deeply meaningful to you, or, you were one of those people passing around like videotapes of this episode or whatever, like I totally am sympathetic to that. Like I don't blame anybody for that. Like I just don't want to like crap on this episode and have people be like, this is the episode that inspired me to come out or stuff like that. Like for me, I just found it a little bit boring. I mean, it's a good episode. It's definitely not like bad. It's above the line, but I too think that I just have to put it, for me, at Lieutenant Commander.
Okay. That's fair.
Just like not trying to hurt anybody's feelings with these reviews. These are just like our interactions with these episodes. So, but if you are mad, do leave lots of comments down below. Which every time we say that, it guarantees that nobody will leave any comments, but
obviously. So I feel like this is one of those things that is an artifact of the times.
Sure.
And maybe even more so for us today than Plato's Stepchildren was. And I don't know.
Maybe.
I don't know if that's accurate. Maybe, yeah.
Well, I feel like what year was that? Like 1968.
60. So, yeah.
So think about like 30 years after that. It's like nobody would bat an eye at that stuff except just like the most horrible, like old people. But like we are still kind of living in the day. Like we had at our local public library this horrible scandal about, people saw, a book of two men holding hands on the cover or something like that, and then
right,
it was like, oh my god, my kids saw that, and then it was this whole huge outrage.
Yeah, and that's fair. Yeah. But my point being that, like, looking back now, are we really like 30 years after this?
Yeah, like 28 years or something like that.
It's difficult to probably give it the respect it deserves for what it did. And so, I don't want to feel like, we're disrespecting what what this accomplished or meant to people.
Sure,
like you said, you went into that, but I'm just like, but yeah, it's, even though I was alive for that, we were like 10.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really, I wasn't watching Star Trek yet at that point. I don't think. Maybe, anyway, doesn't matter. But it just wasn't as impactful at that age.
Right, yeah.
And so I don't have that memory of it, even though I was alive at the time. And now looking back, it's just like it's a thing that I've always, that it didn't hit me that hard when I first saw it, probably a couple years after it aired for the first time. Because even a couple of years on, there's progress being made in this area, and so it's not, we don't have the experience with it, or at least I don't, that other people probably do, and so there's definitely part of our review that is coming from that place of not having been in that place, basically.
Yeah, like we were not aware of the problems of the world at large at that time, so I think it's kind of hard to. Even for people who are older, I think it can also be hard to like look back and realize kind of like how different the atmosphere was at that time, than it is now. So, even though I think a lot of people would still say, there's a lot more progress to make. So I think we've covered, we've disclaimered that enough. I feel like. No. So an episode of TV I definitely saw live at the time, which was a few years after that, was the Simpsons episode, Homer's Phobia.
Oh, yeah. See, that one I saw when it came out. I remember that because, that stands out.
And there was a lot about that episode that went way over my head.
Oh, absolutely. Like, hold on. When was that one?
I want to say it was 97 or 98 or something like that.
Homer's Phobia. Season 8. So that is 1997, February. This is like the Valentine's Day episode, 1997, February 16th.
And there was like all this stuff about like the gay character in that episode using the word queer, and that upsets Homer and stuff like that. And like, when I was watching that as a kid, I did not understand any of like what those people, like what the significance or humor of that whole situation was.
It's like you don't even know like John Waters, who does the guest star voice and what he is very famous for, basically at that point. So like even that the basis of the entire like pastiche is kind of going over your head.
Or like when Bart's wearing a t-shirt and Homer, or he's wearing a Hawaiian shirt and Homer asks where he got it, and he says came out of the closet. Or just like the whole like implying that the entire steelworkers industry is gay.
Yes. Yep.
So I didn't know any steelworkers. I did not understand like what was going on there at all. So, and then like the dedication at the end, it's like to the steelworkers of America. It's like aerospace too. And then looking back on that, that's kind of like a crazy, really well done, but crazy thing for that time. So,
yeah, but it's easier for The Simpsons to get away with that kind of
Sure.
thing too, because, and I mean, that is a couple years after this, and I even said like by a couple of years later,
yeah,
ideas were already changing because of things like this, where it was like, no, we're going to
Sure.
Hollywood's going to put it out there and you're going to accept it, or you're not going to watch Star Trek anymore. And the Star Trek fans, even the ones who didn't like it, aren't going to stop watching Star Trek because of the one moment. Well, not most of them anyway. And
Yeah.
so, so then The Simpsons is is able to push it way further than this episode did. And,
Right.
and in part because all sorts of shows were, exposing people to this, but also because it's The Simpsons, and the people who are going to hate this sort of thing already hate The Simpsons. You had like the whole Marge and Barbara, was it Barb who?
Sure. No, it was, I think
George
maybe,
H.W.'s wife. I don't
think it
remember
was
her name
Barbara
off the top of my
Bush.
head. Anyway, like,
and then they had a whole episode about George Bush. So
yes. So, but it's like, yeah, there was the letter writing like thing between Marge and the president's wife, and then they pushed it further with like the insulting episode to George H.W. Bush, and so the people who were going to be upset about this, they already didn't like The Simpsons,
Sure.
so it was they could do it.
Yeah. Although, there was an episode. I only know this because there's one of the Nixon tapes. There's a famous one of the Nixon tapes. His secret tapes that he made when he was in the Oval Office, where they talk about last night's episode of which was the Archie Bunker one, All in the Family, or whatever.
Yeah, All in the Family. Yeah.
Where Archie Bunker learns that his best friend from the military or something is gay. And so there's a conversation of Nixon and his cronies talking about the episode.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So, and that was like in the early 70s. So, I'm not saying it wasn't groundbreaking or anything for Star Trek to do it, but, there was.
Yeah.
And we've, heard stories about how Sulu and Gene Roddenberry, or not Sulu, but George Takei and Gene Roddenberry always wanted to like do a gay character on Star Trek and stuff like that. But
I'm reading about that episode of Simpsons and the critical response, and it's like a lot of like TV Guide put in the top 12 Simpsons episodes of all time in 1998, and like Entertainment Weekly in 2008 is talking about how like Waters is one of the best all-time guest stars on The Simpsons. Yeah. So there's a lot of love for that episode. And then it's like, but conversely, Off the Telly writers Steve Williams and Ian Jones named this one of the worst five worst episodes, stating that leaves such a nasty taste in the mouth as Homer is quite simply a bastard throughout the course of the episode.
Yeah, that is kind of. But I mean, you understand like why they did that as a viewer. Like,
well, yeah, I mean,
that's Homer, the whole point, is that that Homer can go through that like development.
But Homer's opinions are almost always wrong.
Right.
That's how the show is set up. Unless it's one of those where you're really supposed to relate to Homer, and he's there's some episodes like that. But when Homer has some sort of knee-jerk opinion, he's stupid, so it's wrong.
And his takes in that episode are so hilariously bad.
Yeah.
Like it's like if there was a law, it would be against it and stuff like that. And then he wants all the gay people to mince about and let everybody know that they're that way and stuff like that.
So, and then in June 2003, Igor Smikov sued the Russian television channel REN, claiming that The Simpsons, along with Family Guy, was morally degenerate and promoted drugs, violence, and homosexuality.
Sure.
As evidence, Homer's phobia was shown to the judge to prove that The Simpsons promoted homosexuality and thus should not air again on TV. The case was thrown out after one day. I like that. That's your day one. Judge, this is the core of our case. You have to see this episode of The Simpsons.
So, that reminds me, there's a case, I saw YouTube about it on like the Wang channel or something. WHANG. There was a court case where a woman tried to sue all the homosexuals in America.
Wow.
It was like, just the the filing is really funny because she describes herself as like, Jane Smith, like soldier of God and representative of decency or something like that. And then under defendant, it just says homosexuals. And then the judge threw it out because she wasn't actually asking for anything. It was just a long like accusation that they had like ruined American, like the moral fabric of America or something like that. He's like, she doesn't seem to be really like asking for any kind of damages. Just an acknowledgement
like,
that
okay, I guess, yeah.
Just an acknowledgement that her opinion is right, and that's not really. I forget the wording. It was like that's like beyond the jurisdiction of the state of Nebraska or whatever.
Nice.
Anyway, okay.
Oh yeah, for real this time.
For real, let's wrap this up. So, if you made it this far, thanks for listening. Don't forget to check the description. Maybe something interesting in there, but maybe not. You never know. You never know until you look. But I'm Fletcher, about to say goodbye as Data.
Adios.
Till we meet again, keep the blood wine warm and the prune juice chilled.